Ashford, and in East Sussex, the A26 is partly blocked each way by an accident at Lewis causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have announced a tour to Colombia at the invitation of Vice President Francia Marquez. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are expected to highlight the threat posed to children by the internet. Why they have to go to Colombia to do that, I'm not entirely sure. However, this is literally within a week of saying that Harry saying he can't come to London, he doesn't feel it's safe to bring his wife, Meghan, to London because, he fears for her personal safety. And Colombia, to my reckoning, is one of those countries where the government advise you not to even go. In any case, joining me now is royal broadcaster and commentator Rafe Hedder-Mancu to explain what's going on here. Rafe, hello, lovely to see you.
Hello, lovely as always. A bit of comic relief here. Yes, so you're quite right. Literally just days after Prince Harry declared that he couldn't bring his wife to Britain because of the potential risk of an acid attack or knife attack, they've now announced that they're going to go to Colombia, one of the world's 10 most dangerous countries.
Right.
A nation riven with political assassinations, with murder, with kidnappings and gun crime. I mean, the hypocrisy is mind-boggling. And it just comes a few months after they went on another trip to Nigeria, another world leader in murder and political kidnappings. Now, look, no one is saying that they're going to be putting themselves into harm's way. They're going there at the invitation of this radically left-wing government. And, of course, we've had successful royal tours of Colombia in the past. Just last year, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, went to Colombia. 10 years ago, our current King and Queen also had a successful trip to Colombia. But that's rather the point. If members of the royal family are able to go to the world's most dangerous nations, the idea that they can't come to the UK because it's too dangerous is simply absurd.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Tuesday the 13th of August, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson.
Yay! In for the lovely Beth Turner. The families of 3 victims of last year's Nottingham attack say the NHS has blood on its hands for missing warnings about the killer, Valdel Calcone.
Absolutely convinced that we can smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
We will set up Border Security Command to take back control of our borders and smash the gangs.
Nobody but nobody should be making that trip across the channel in small boats.
Well, that was the Prime Minister in the run-up to the election saying he put an end to the small boat crisis by smashing those criminal gangs. We're going to bring you an exclusive report on that to say, is he living up to those promises?
Bit of a spoiler, not much smashing going on. Right, Israel is on high alert. The Prime Minister makes a rare call to the President of Iran and warns him not to attack Israel as world leaders seek to cool the tensions down.
And the Sussexes have lost another key member of staff. Funny that. Prince Harry and Meghan's Chief of Staff, Josh Kettler, has quit after just 3 months in the role. Another one bites the dust.
Don't sing, just don't sing. And overnight, the former US President Donald Trump spoke to Elon Musk, the founder of X, and claims that Joe Biden was ousted in a coup by the Democrats.
And say what you want, this was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
We sort of know that. He was forced out.
Well, kind of. I think he sort of, didn't really want to go.
No.
I thought it was the top one for the team, I think they call it.
Well, he was losing so much support.
Yeah.
He had to go, didn't he, really? The former speaker.
And Kamala is doing well. She's good,
Polls
doing
are
well in the
showing.
ratings.
Polls are showing she's ahead.
It's a girl thing. Right, but this isn't about your opinion. Funnily enough, my opinion is all about you and what you want to say. So send your views and post your comments. It's really simple by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, I think let's get the news headlines with the lovely Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. It's 9:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calicane, saying they have blood on their hands. That's after a new review found an NHS trust played down Calicane's risk to the public by potentially omitting key details, including his symptoms of psychosis. Calicane, who was a paranoid schizophrenic, fatally stabbed 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar before killing 65-year-old caretaker Ian Coates in June of 2023. A man has been charged after an 11-year-old girl was stabbed in Leicester Square. The Met Police have confirmed 32-year-old Johan Pinatru, of no fixed address, had been charged with attempted murder and possession of a bladed article. It was initially thought that the girl's mother had also been hurt. However, it was later confirmed the blood from her daughter's injuries had been mistaken for injuries of her own. And Donald Trump has called Joe Biden's decision to quit the presidential race a coup during a talk with tech billionaire Elon Musk. The interview finally got underway on X, with more than 1.3 million people tuning in after a delay, which Musk blamed on a cyber attack. Trump confirmed he will return to Butler in Pennsylvania in October after surviving an assassination attempt on the 13th of July. The US presidential candidate also criticised the EU and his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris.
I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different...
Yeah.
Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the UK with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson, who's in for Bev Turner.
Yes, now we're going to get straight on to the big story of the day. The families of the three Nottingham stabbing victims, Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates, have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calicane in the lead up to the attacks, saying they had blood on their hands.
That's after a new review found an NHS trust identified missed opportunities to deal with Calicane's psychosis. He had been sectioned no less than 4 times. We're joined now by Rad Seagull, who's a spokesperson for the victim's family. Rad, morning to you. It's appalling and tragic for these families to have lost their loved ones in the most cruel and terrible circumstances. But then to read this report, this man should not have been on the loose. He should have been sectioned and medicated.
Andrew, Dawn, good morning. Andrew, you're absolutely spot on. Our lovely Ian, Barney and Grace should still be alive today, and that man should never have been on the streets. And I'm doing the best to support the families as best I can to get justice and accountability. But where on earth, as human beings, do you go when your loved ones have been destroyed in this manner, Andrew?
Can you just, obviously, a lot of people out here are angry, but for the family in particular, the fact that there have been so many failures, systemic failures, both in the NHS, in the care, and also in the police. Can you just give us a little picture of how the families are feeling this morning? There must be incredibly anger and to be living this pain constantly.
Dawn, you're absolutely right. So, first things first, they're coping with the most unimaginable loss. But then on top of that, when you learn that the state, the various authorities and organizations who were there to keep these lovely people safe failed, not just on the day, but in the 3 or 4 years in the lead up to it, there were so many opportunities to prevent this tragedy from happening. And all I can say this morning is, having spoken to them, we've obviously known about this for a little while now, but this morning, their blood is boiling. So they're coping with the loss. And now they're faced with, where do you go with that when you know that your loved one should still be here? I don't know how they're coping with it. And, they're getting counseling, but the best that we can do, and with your wonderful help, is to make sure that these tragedies are, these loved ones have not been lost in vain, and that we can try and do some good going forward, on top of making sure that there's accountability at every level, whether that's with the police, whether that's with the NHS, whether that's with the local council. Everybody here had a part to play. Everybody had an opportunity to keep Callacane off the streets, and they failed. So there's a lot of work still to do. So thank you for asking how they are. I can't even begin to describe the pain that they're going through this morning, Don.
They've been pushing, have they not, for the sentence to be reviewed, because they feel Callacane should have a whole life sentence and be served in a prison, not in a secure hospital. Does that campaign continue?
It does, Andrew. The families are absolutely certain that Callacane, in that moment, had mental capacity. He planned it. He was carrying a rucksack full of weapons. He didn't harm other people. So they're convinced that in that moment, he had criminal responsibility for what he did. And together with the family's lawyers, we're gathering as much evidence, documentation together, and to drive this to the public inquiry that we've all heard about this morning, this judge-led inquiry. And if new evidence comes out at that inquiry, which the current government must be commended because they promised the families this. If new evidence comes out that in fact the courts and the experts in the criminal case got it wrong, then there is an opportunity to have this revisited. The families are utterly convinced that Callacane knew what he was doing. And if he knew what he was doing, then there is criminal culpability, and the lawyers and I are steering them in that direction. It's going to take a little while, Andrew. We must be patient. We must gather everything together and then hold this post office style inquiry, which we've all been watching. And that's what these families are entitled to. And that's when we will get to the bottom of it all, Andrew, to get that accountability. But for goodness sake, and I know we've all been discussing it this morning, we know the NHS is broken. It's under-resourced. There are not enough people. They're doing far too much work. And these things happen. So let's hope Nottingham, Andrew and Dawn, is that opportunity to have a sea change in approach. And because, we're entitled to send our kids to university. Ian was entitled to go to work that morning and come back safely. And you can tell how emotional I am this morning.
Sure.
I'm just so upset on their behalf.
All right, Rad Seagull speaking for the Nottingham families. Thank you for that. We join us in the studio is the former Labour MP and now Chief Executive of the think tank Labour Together. Jonathan, one of your briefs when you were in the Commons until the last election was the health portfolio, Shadow Health. This is a cataclysmic failure by various bodies. He was sectioned 4 times. He wasn't taking his medication.
I mean, absolutely, but can I just say at the start, I cannot imagine the pain, the anguish, the anger, the upset that the family must be going through to not only have lost their loved ones in the most horrific of circumstances, but to now learn of these deep systematic failures in the system, which had something happened sooner in the system, their loved ones may still be with us today. So it's absolutely right that there's a proper inquiry in this, and I think the Labour government have committed to that, and hopefully we'll have more details of that soon. But it is clear that something has significantly gone wrong here. And it is, I think, about a bigger picture about mental health services in this country. Mental health, improving mental health was always one of my big passions in politics when I was both a health spokesperson for the Labour Party, but also as a politician, something I've campaigned on and will continue to campaign on. And we have problems. People who do not get access to the care that they need when they've got very, very serious mental health problems, which is what the killer had in this instance. But also people with what is sometimes described as lower-level mental health issues don't get support. And if you've got a drug or an alcohol problem, and that's something I'm passionate about because my dad had an alcohol problem, you can very rarely get the support either. Our mental health system is broken, and it desperately and urgently needs fixing.
The problem with that, Jonathan, is Callacane was getting treatment. He was being treated, but he was let out of that treatment because of system failure. This isn't to do with funding per se. He was in treatment, and they let him out to commit this horrible crime. I mean, now it's sort of like 3 people have lost their lives because of it. I mean, Labour really do need... I know you're not serving MP at the moment, but Labour have to do something. They have to do something fast. I mean, how many more people are there out there like this? Well,
when I say access to treatment, I mean that in the broad terms, because as I understand the case, I might be wrong on this, because I've not followed every in and out of the particulars of the case, but for a while he was refusing his medication, and the system failed to deal with him. And now this comes down to something called the Mental Health Act, which is I don't want to get too sort of boring and technical about it. The Mental Health Act is the regime that governs who is sectioned and who isn't sectioned. It does need reform, because some of it is really sort of old-fashioned, almost Victorian, actually, in the way some of it operates. The 2 main parties have said it needs reform. The Labour government has said it is going to push ahead with reforming that Act. But I think one of the questions and the challenges for the Labour government, and my old colleague and friend Wes Streeting, is how reform of the Mental Health Act will deal with people who are a danger to society, a danger to themselves, and what the regime is for sectioning.
Let's move on to another subject. When are you going to stop the boats?
Well,
hang on, we've had hundreds and thousands since you lot got in. There was
hundreds and thousands under the other lot as well.
There was a Rwanda plan. Now, I know you mocked it, but the first thing you did was cancel it. Could you not have even tried to see if it was a deterrent?
It was a fiasco, Andrew.
How do you know it wasn't a deterrent? You didn't give it a try.
It cost £700 million. Right. And I think only 4 volunteers went to Rwanda. More journalists went to Rwanda than actual people who came on boats.
700 arrived on Sunday.
I know,
2 people died.
And that is a tragedy. That is horrific. It's a serious, serious problem. But the idea that you're going to fix this in 4 weeks when the previous government couldn't fix it in years, and in fact...
Why didn't you try Rwanda?
Rwanda isn't going to work.
We had evidence that migrants were moving from Northern Ireland to Southern Ireland to avoid the threat of Rwanda. Widely reported.
Rwanda was an expensive fiasco. It was not going to fix this. The way you fix this and you stop the criminal smugglers being in charge of our borders is going after those criminal smugglers.
Well, we heard from Yvette Cooper that, you know, we're going to smash the gangs by closing down nail bars and car washes. Have we closed any down yet? I mean, it doesn't seem to be making much difference if we have.
Well, you've got to enforce immigration law. But, of course, under the previous law, immigration law wasn't enforced. Now, I got criticised in the election campaign when I pointed out, under the Tories, what they'd done is they were basically leaving asylum claims, people in limbo, putting them up in hotels and never processing their claims. The consequence of that would have been spending billions and billions of pounds, leaving people with no status in this accommodation forever. What you actually need to do is process people's claims, so those who come here can get on with their lives, and then you put in place sensible return. And then you put in place returns agreements with countries across the world for people who are not asylum claims, who are economic migrants and don't have the right to be in the UK.
Good luck.
That is a sensible, humane
good luck having a return
immigration
agreement
system
with Iran.
Well, that's exactly the point, isn't it? You have returns agreements with countries where people are economic migrants and don't pass or don't qualify for the immigration status that is the law of our land.
Long, hot summer coming up. Very briefly, long, hot summer coming up. How quickly can you try and do your plan to smash the gangs?
No one...
Bet Cooper seemed to make it sound very easy.
Yeah, just a few nail bars.
Yeah.
No one is pretending that this is easy or straightforward. In fact, the previous Conservative Minister, Grant Shapps, was on a podcast just last week saying how he thought Rishi Sunak was wrong to have said he's going to stop the boats because it was unrealistic. And it did prove utterly unrealistic because they didn't have a serious plan. Rishi Sunak thought, I'll stop the boats, and then you'd give him glowing endorsements.
We've got to go to the break.
Jonathan, how long are Labour going to say it's that lot's fault before you start accept responsibility?
I think at least another year.
A year?
Only a year, Andrew.
Jonathan Ashworth is staying with us, and we want to get your thoughts too on Sir Keir Starmer being branded the greatest threat to free speech in British history. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign, Children and Young People Matter. Because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. You know, for me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, you know, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. And it's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, I know we've talked about this before, and certainly, I mean, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, you know, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, I mean, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, you know, Omar, that happen. You know, children are the ones that are impacted. And, you know, it's, for me, you know, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, you know, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay, from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fatimascampaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:50. You're on Britain's Newsroom. This is Dawn Neeson.
Dawn Neeson, well remembered.
It is not Beverly Turner.
No.
Beverly Turner.
Yeah.
And this is Jonathan Ashworth, who was, until recently, a Labour MP. He was one of the few to lose their seat, but we won't go into all of that because we don't want to intrude on private grief, even though we're about to talk about free speech.
Stop doing it then. You said you weren't going to.
Nigel Farage,
Jonathan.
who's now an MP, says that he fears Keir Starmer is about to embark on the biggest restriction on free speech in peacetime because of the internet, because of cracking down on the lies, the hate, the propaganda on... I mean,
where's Nigel Farage said this? He's presumably said it on GB News, on his Twitter account, on Fox News. You can say it in the House of Commons. You can say it on his YouTube channel. I mean, cracking down on free speech. Oh, give over, Nigel. Of course he's not cracking down on free speech.
But he's making the point he's going to use the far-right riots, if you accept, to restrict civil liberties.
Well, look, there is a serious question as to what material is allowed on social media.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, quite rightly, nobody can come on your show and make defamatory comments about colleagues, or if they did, they'd get themselves in trouble, or start making racist remarks, they'd get themselves in trouble, or start inciting violence. You know, very quickly, the show would close that down. And that's right, because there are rules around what can be said and what cannot be said on broadcast platforms. So why can people go onto social media and incite violence, make racist, Islamophobic remarks, and so on? There does have to be, I think, some rules around this Wild West. How it is governed, I don't know.
But I thought there already were rules. Already, the government could technically, under the online safety bill, take 10% of an online company's turnover if they are inciting hatred.
But I don't think the online safety bill has been fully enacted yet. I think we're still waiting for Ofcom to make it.
And the provisions won't come until the end of next year. It's far too late.
So the provisions are still not there. But this is also about the people who run these platforms, and what they do is, I mean, look, forget sort of Elon Musk's sort of attention-seeking buffoonery on the platform. It's about the algorithms, and the algorithms deliberately promote, I think, incendiary material, because that's what gets clicks. And that's what the platforms make their money out of in terms of the advertising revenues. And that's going to be dealt with.
But that is a wild west, isn't it? There is no real legislation globally governing how the internet and social networks operate. But the one thing, there's a very fine line, isn't there, between racial hatred and inciting violence and speculating about who may have done what. I mean, we had that example of that 55-year-old woman who was simply speculating on who may have committed, a crime. Now, what grounds is that an arrestable offence?
Because I think in that circumstance, and obviously we've got to be careful because some of these things are subject to...
Yeah, this person hasn't been charged, by the way, but...
nonetheless, given there's obvious authority interest in this, I just want to be careful what we say. But the point is, you've got to... when you've got a significant social media following and you're seen as a social media campaigner, and I think if you've been campaigning on issues around lockdowns and vaccines and so on, so you've got a following, then I think you do have a responsibility to be careful in what you are posting. And it does incite, it does lead to people acting in particular ways.
All right, listen, Jonathan, we're running out of time. I suppose the clock's piece. Will you come again? First time in GB News studio.
Yes, I'd be delighted to. Yeah,
delighted to have him.
Thank
That
you.
is Jonathan Ashworth. I didn't get to taunt him about losing his seat. He had a 22,000 majority, but somehow
You did mention it in the beginning slightly.
This is GB News with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson. Alex has got your latest weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday, but nonetheless some hot sunny weather across eastern parts today. However, elsewhere, things are going to be a bit fresher as we have a band of rain pushing in, and that's going to be bringing some wet weather too. Most of that rain has now cleared away from Northern Ireland with just a few showery outbreaks following in behind, but across Scotland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest, it is going to turn cloudy and wet as we go into the afternoon. Ahead of the front towards central eastern parts of England, it's staying sunny and with that pretty hot, with temperatures getting into the high 20s, so not as high as it was yesterday. As we head towards this evening, that front will have started to clear away across parts of Scotland, but nonetheless some showery outbreaks of rain following in behind, and there will be some strong winds, particularly out towards the west, some coastal gales perhaps for the Hebrides along with that showery rain. For Northern Ireland, it's a mostly fine end to the day, some sunny spells, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, a cloudier story across much of Northern England as that front continues to make its way southeastwards. That rain then spreading across Wales into the Midlands and many parts of southwest England, but all the time across the east and southeast it is staying largely dry. Some clear skies to end the night here, but overnight we are going to see the cloud building as that front gradually makes its way towards the southeast, and here we could have some heavy bursts of rain around as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further towards the northwest, some clearer skies behind that front and fresher air, and so here temperatures quite on the low side, dropping into single figures away from the towns and cities. Through tomorrow morning, yes, some further heavy rain likely across parts of central, eastern, southeastern England for a time. The rain is going to break up a bit as we go into the afternoon though, but with the bright sunny spells we could see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers developing later. Elsewhere, plenty of dry, bright, sunny weather around and temperatures around average for the time of year, so mid-20s at best. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M77 in East Renfrewshire, the outside lanes closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 4 near Newton Mearns, causing delays. On the M42 in Warwickshire, there are 2 lanes closed southbound at junction 3A for the M40, where a vehicle caught fire, with queues towards there from junction 5 at Solihull. In Essex, the A414 is closed each way between Writtle and Chelmsford after an accident. The M25 in Hertfordshire is partly blocked clockwise by an accident just after junction 18 at Chorley Wood, with queues from junction 17 at Maple Cross. In West Sussex, the A286 is closed each way between Kingsley Green and Fernhurst because of a fallen tree. And in East Sussex, the A26 is partly blocked each way by an accident at the junction with Orchard Road at Lewes, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday the 13th of August. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with him, Andrew Pearce, and me, Dawn Neeson, in for Bev Turner.
And the families of the 3 victims of last year's Nottingham murders say the NHS has blood on its hands for missing warnings about the killer, Valdo Calicane.
I'm absolutely convinced that we can smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
We will set up Border Security Command to take back control of our borders and smash the gangs.
Nobody but nobody should be making that trip across the channel in small boats.
In the run-up to the election, Sir Keir Starmer said he'd put an end to the small boat crisis by smashing the criminal gangs. Mark White has more on that.
Well, here in Dover, another small boat is in the English Channel as we speak, attempting to make that crossing. There has been no slowdown in the number of small boats crossing, 5,000 since Labour came to power.
That's an extraordinary figure, isn't it? And overnight, the former US President Donald Trump spoke to Elon Musk, the founder of X, and claims Joe Biden was ousted by a coup within the Democrats.
And say what you want, this was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
And meanwhile, the royal Sussex staffer quit. Prince Harry and Meghan's chief of staff, Josh Kettler, has stepped down after just 3 months in the role. Another one bites the dust. Cameron Walker has all the latest on this.
Yeah, proving to be a big distraction from the upcoming Colombia tour, especially since this is reportedly close to 20 members of staff that has now quit the Sussexes service since their marriage in 2018. We'll be asking the question, why?
Cameron Walker says he'll be asking the question. Well, I think we know the answer why.
You think you know the answer, but I'm open to debate, because it's not all about what you think, funny enough.
I just have a suspicion. I suspect Meghan Markle is
Do you think she wears the trousers?
to work.
Well, there was only one out of that duo that were playing with, balls in the garden and juggling.
Exactly, while she was talking to the cameras. And every time there is an interview, she seems to do most of the talking.
Yes. Maybe Harry's just shy.
What do you think? We'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments. You can visit gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, here's the news with Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, thank you. Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 10 o'clock. Your headlines. The families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calacane in the lead-up to the attacks, saying they have blood on their hands. That's after a new review found an NHS trust played down Calacane's risk to the public by potentially omitting key details, including his symptoms of psychosis. Calacane, who has paranoid schizophrenia, fatally stabbed 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar before killing 65-year-old caretaker Ian Coates in June of 2023. A man has been charged after an 11-year-old girl was stabbed in Leicester Square. The Met Police have confirmed 32-year-old Johan Pinatru, of no fixed address, had been charged with attempted murder and possession of a bladed article. It was initially thought that the girl's mother had also been hurt. However, it was later confirmed that blood from her daughter's injuries had been mistaken for injuries of her own. In the US, Donald Trump has called Joe Biden's decision to quit the presidential race a coup during a talk with tech billionaire Elon Musk. The interview finally got underway on X, with more than 1.3 million people tuning in after a delay, which Musk blamed on a cyber attack. Trump confirmed he will return to Butler in Pennsylvania in October after surviving an assassination attempt. The US presidential candidate also criticised the EU and his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris.
What I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different... Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said, we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Back in the UK, nearly 5,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel since Labour came to power. That's as the former head of the Border Force, Tony told GB News that Sir Keir Starmer's plans to smash the gangs will be very difficult to achieve and rely on the cooperation of many other countries.
We expect the UK to be able to smash the gangs, if you like, without some form of international collaboration where powers can be used by other countries on their jurisdictions to bring people to justice and to prevent people and goods crossing borders, etc., rather than the UK being able to do this on their own.
Tory leadership hopeful Tom Tugendhat will call for a national conversation about the root causes of the recent riots, arguing that Britain's social fabric has deteriorated. In his first major speech since declaring his bid for the Conservative leadership, the former security minister is expected to criticise a culture of denial. Mr Tugendhat is expected to accuse the Prime Minister of a failure of leadership and urge the police to use uncompromising force in dealing with violent disorder. The Prime Minister has warned Iran not to attack Israel during a rare phone call with the country's president. It follows a joint statement issued by the UK, US, France and Germany seeking to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East. Sir Keir Starmer told the Iranian president he is deeply concerned amid growing fears Iran will retaliate against Israel over the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has told Russian leader Vladimir Putin that the war is coming home in his most direct challenge to Putin yet. That's a week after Ukraine first stormed the Kursk region of Russia in what is the largest counterattack on Putin's territory since the war began. Ukraine's top commander has said Kyiv's forces now control 1,000 square kilometres of Russian territory. Meanwhile, all of Ukraine is under air raid alert amid Russian drone attacks and 2 ballistic missiles. An inquest into the death of former England cricketer Graham Thorpe is opening today after his wife revealed the sportsman tragically took his own life. Tributes flooded in for the late cricketer after his death on August the 5th. His family have since revealed that he has been suffering from depression and anxiety. And the UK unemployment rate has surprisingly fallen, according to official figures. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows a percentage of people who are out of work and looking for a job dropped to 4.2% in July. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the UK on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson, who is in for Bev Turner, looking fragrant in yellow.
You can't miss me, can you?
You certainly can't.
Dressed as a giant lemon. Right, now, OK, the big story on the front of many of your newspapers this morning, the families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims, Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kuma and Ian Coates, have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Baldo Calacani in the lead-up to the attacks, saying they have blood on their hands.
Well, that's after a new review found an NHS trust missed very many opportunities to deal with him. He was sectioned no fewer than 4 times and in the end was on the loose, effectively, and was not taking his medication.
Yeah. It's not like he escaped, by the way. They let him into the care of his GP. I haven't
did.
seen mine for 3 years. Good luck with that one. Right, we're joined now by Rachel Kelly, an ambassador for the mental health charity SANE. Rachel, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Obviously, the inquiry is shocking. I mean, it's absolutely a mess of inefficiency and cock-ups and cover-ups, let's be honest. What do you make of what you've heard?
Well, I think it's invidious in a way to comment on the individual case, but it does reflect broader trends about what's happening in mental health provision. And one of the problems we have is there's been such a widespread increase in anxiety and depression. We saw it earlier with the tragic case of the cricketer taking his own life, that some of these conditions like schizophrenia and psychosis are being neglected and those people are not getting the kind of support and help that they need. We have just basically not enough psychiatrists, not enough psychiatric beds. And I think the other broad trend is that we moved psychiatric care roughly in the last few decades away from care in hospitals, psychiatric beds, to this concept of care in the community. And that is another problem in these very severe cases.
Because actually, Rachel, he didn't need care in the community. He needed to be in a secure unit of some description.
He needed to be in a secure unit. And if you look at the numbers, we have around about 13,000 psychiatrists all in. We've got about 700 vacancies for consultant psychiatrists. And if you look at the way that we have replenished other specialities in the National Health, so consultants for cardiovascular health, consultants for cancer, there's just been a very big increase. But that increase has not been matched by serious psychiatric care. And you'll have heard over the years this sort of idea that mental health is the poor relation of physical health. And politicians have been saying this for ages. Came up in the King's speech, once again, Starmer promising that mental health would have parity with physical health, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, I was looking, Rachel, the Mail's pointed out Jonathan Zito was stabbed to death on a London tube station 30 years ago by a schizophrenic who'd been pushed from pillar to post from 4 or 5 different institutions. He'd been sectioned, he'd not been sectioned. That was 30 years ago. So it seems we're not even learning the lessons from then. And I wonder then, Rachel, if it was a resource issue, or is it just as you say, it's always been a bit of a poor relation?
Well, I think that yes, you make a couple of very good points there. It has been a very long-term problem. We have made huge strides in a broader awareness of mental health problems and taking them as seriously as political, as physical problems. So when I first wrote about my own experience of severe depression in 2014, I was assumed to be very brave. I think now there's a widespread understanding that mental health is a very serious issue and we need to take it seriously. But within that overall kind of increase in awareness, this particular section of very severe problems, when you read about mental health in the press and in the media, you tend to get a focus on anxiety and depression. That's where the celebrities are coming forward saying they've got problems. But this little section, which is about 5%, this very serious area of mental health, is an area, it doesn't get the focus. It's not kind of what we might think as sexy. Charities don't necessarily give it the sort of support, the profile that other mental health problems have. So even though it is the most tragic end, it's not getting the focus. And as you say, it hasn't for a long time.
Rachel, one of the things that worried me in this review is the Chief Inspector of Healthcare at CQC said the issues are not unique and without action will continue to pose an inherent risk to patient and public safety. How worried should the public be?
Well, I mean, in a case like this, which is obviously so utterly tragic and has had such a high profile, anxiety levels do go up. But of course, it is the exception. And I think our best approach to resolving these things is to stay calm and not overreact. But we do need these sort of systematic changes. We desperately need to start with more psychiatrists, with more support and more help for people with serious problems. I mean, there are two issues. There's the issue of the sheer numbers of professionals who are able to help people with these kinds of problems. But also, in my work as an ambassador for Rethink and Sane, if you go around the country as I do, there's huge variation in terms of kind of getting people help, how quickly that happens. We've seen in this inquiry a series of sort of cock-ups and inefficiencies. Some health trusts are good. Let's keep this in perspective. This has turned out to be, as you say, a catalogue of disastrous errors, but that's not true everywhere. But we do need to level up and make sure that this just never happens again.
All right, Rachel, that's Rachel Kelly, who is an ambassador for the mental health charity Sane and also Rethink Mental Illness. Thanks so much for joining us. I think we have to cling on to what Rachel said, actually.
No, absolutely.
This is an exception.
It is.
And a horrific exception, as Jonathan Zita was 30 years ago. But there is
not learning the lessons.
No, but as Rachel points out, 700 psychiatrists short.
Yeah, and if we'd have had time, I would have liked to have asked Rachel, how hopeful is she that what we've learned from this review will change anything?
Indeed. Now, moving on, GB News can exclusively reveal 5,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel since Labour swept to power with that biggest majority since 1997.
Right, OK, that's as Border Force experts warn Sir Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs is a near impossible task.
We're going to talk now to our GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who is, of course, in the right place, Dover. Mark, that's quite a milestone, 5,000.
Yes, indeed. And even Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, had warned the Cabinet just recently that they faced a difficult summer ahead in terms of small boat arrivals, because as the weather gives way to flat calm conditions in the Channel, then the people smugglers will continue and are continuing to push the boats out. One has left Dunkirk this morning, trying to make it across the Channel as we speak. I've been to the boat storage yard, where a lot of the boats that are intercepted in the Channel are eventually deposited. Here's my report. At a compound on the outskirts of Dover, a sobering illustration of the scale of the task facing the new Labour government in their efforts to end the Channel migrant crisis. Row after row of small boats, hundreds of them, many now deflated and rolled up. As we filmed, contractors dropped off more dinghies, the latest to have made the illegal crossing into UK waters. This is for Rishi Sunak! Sir Keir Starmer's focus is on going after the people smugglers, who've now sent thousands more migrants across the Channel since Labour came to power. But the former head of Border Force says tackling international criminal gangs will be extremely difficult without full cooperation from many other governments.
is a very, very big ask, I think, to expect the UK to be able to smash the gangs, if you like, without some form of international collaboration where powers can be used by other countries on their jurisdictions to bring people to justice and to prevent people and goods crossing borders, etc., rather than the UK being able to do this on their own.
Tony Smith says there is no indication so far that the appetite of the smugglers and their customers has been in any way diminished since Labour came to power.
This is a hugely lucrative business. There is an unending supply of migrants pervading the EU border, many of whom are in various member states, very keen to get across to the UK, who are prepared to mortgage their lives, effectively, to get a place on a very dangerous vessel to get themselves into UK territorial waters. That narrative still exists, I think, across Europe and beyond. So the pull factor is very much there.
For now, at least, the migrant boats will continue to stack up here, as even the government acknowledges it'll take some time for its new approach to impact the organised criminal gangs, making millions from their trade in human misery. Mark White, GB News.
Well, that's an unwelcome headline for the government,
isn't it, Josh? Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful weather down there, and we've got good weather forecasts coming up, so it's going to keep coming. And you know what? You know, the government has plans. We're going to do this, but what are you going to do?
And they cancel Rwanda on day one. I know they said it was a joke, it was expensive, but there was evidence from what we saw in Northern Ireland.
It was
a deterrent, and they got rid of it. They should have at least tried it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because what have we got now? We've got Yvette Cooper saying, well, we're going to tackle the gangs by closing down nail bars, illegal car washes. And this backlog, I mean, the shot of the dinghies, you can't believe it. So why don't the French pierce them before they leave the French shore?
Not difficult.
Is that rather than standing just watching them and waving them off?
Now, up next, find out how the pop superstar Madonna has outraged Italians with her 66th birthday party planned. Who has a big 66th birthday party? What did you do for your 66th?
Oh,
sorry.
Go away. If I look like that...
You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
A court on Wednesday ruled that a teenager was wrongly ignored before being forced into end-of-life care. Sussexes Colombia, who was 19, died last year after being prevented from travelling abroad for treatment after doctors said her condition was incurable. Doctors said Ms. Colombia's objection to their decision was unreasonable and that she should have all life-sustaining treatment ended and be put on a palliative care pathway. Last August, a ruling said that the teenager lacked mental capacity to make her own decisions. But 3 judges in the Court of Appeal overturned that decision last week. Lawyers said the move reaffirms the right of patients to disagree with their doctors. The teenager remained fully conscious while being treated by the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. Well, to discuss this tragic case, Sussexes' father, Thirumalai, and brother Varshan join me now. Thank you so much for joining me in these desperately sad circumstances. This is very important for other people who may find themselves in a similar position, that they will be able to make decisions about their own care with the support of their families, rather than the sometimes arrogance of the medical profession who think that they know best. So you must be, I hope, very reassured by this judgment that Sussexes has achieved something for other people.
Yes, definitely, because this arrogance transformed into cruelty towards my sister's care and ill treatment of the whole family. They think they are on the top of the hierarchical spectrum, and they treated us like we were on the bottom of the lower end of the chains, or rather as low class, but we ensured that our class remained.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're concentrating.
It is 10:22, Britain's Newsroom, with me, Andrew Pearce, and Dawn Newsome, a vision in yellow.
In bright yellow, with a matching highlighter. This is getting a bit OCD, do you reckon?
I do. In the studio is our panel, the very fine Piers Pottinger and the very fine GB News political commentator, Nigel Nelson.
I'm surrounded by gorgeous young men, and you.
That's charming, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
Come on, you just made a joke about my age.
Yes, gentlemen, London's most...
leave now.
Yes, London's most notorious phone snatcher. Tell us more.
Yeah, this is a guy called Sonny Stringer who's been caught, which is...
His name really is Sonny Stringer?
Well, that's the name that he certainly was convicted under. And he managed to steal 24 mobiles within an hour on an electric bike, which could go
hate
up
those
to,
electric bikes.
Yeah, which could go up to 50 miles an hour. So the question is, what do you do about it? This is another sort of spate of crime we keep talking about. Knife crime, for instance. What do you do about somebody like this? We've all had friends who've lost...
because he's on his electric bike.
Yeah.
You can't hear it. He comes up behind someone on the phone and snatches out their hand.
phone from your ear, effectively.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
The peril of people using their phones in the street.
Yeah. So, I mean, my answer would be neighbourhood police, that you need people, you need them out there to go and do that. Yvette Cooper's talked about getting 13,000 more neighbourhood police and PCSOs. But the more you've got on the streets, the more likely you are to catch people like this.
Yes?
Yeah, I mean... I think that, as you know, I believe the Bobby on the beat is a great deterrent. And it was proved, this terrible stabbing in Leicester Square yesterday.
Yeah.
The police were there in minutes, in a couple of minutes, because they are in Leicester Square. They're not in Tooting High Street.
No.
And I mean, we have on our local WhatsApp, community WhatsApp, endless stories of people having their phones nicked by people on bicycles.
Yeah.
And it's all very well, Yvette Cooper, to say we're going to have 13,000 new police. When and how? I mean, she might as well, a good idea would be all the people coming in on the dinghies, give them a uniform, a truncheon, and say, you've got a job.
Well, yeah,
you know,
right.
we could have 700 tomorrow.
But also, is there not an issue about these electric bikes and these electric scooters? They're not regulated in any shape or form. They go very fast.
They're very dangerous.
They're very dangerous. Yeah. And they can literally... implode, combust. But
and
they are a mugger's chance.
And the people who drive them or ride them ride on pavements.
They do.
They go down cycle lanes the wrong way. They are very dangerous. And with all the CCTV cameras around the place, even if the police are not on the street, they should be capturing these images of these people and actually arresting them, because they are unregulated and incredibly dangerous.
But the problem you've got with this story now is there is a mobile phone stolen in London. 1 every 4 minutes.
Is that so?
Yeah, I had mine done recently as well, not by someone on a bike, but... And
were you holding it when they took it?
No, it was in my bag.
Oh.
See, but a friend had it very quickly. A friend had her phone stolen. She was walking home from work and she reported it to the police. And she was phoning her husband like, you're told to do. I'm on my way home. I'll be with you. And the police said, why were you using your phone? And it's like, because advice to a woman on your own is to use your phone to say, I'm leaving here. I'll be with you in such and such a point. You can't win. But it's out of control, totally out of control.
But also, under the previous government, policing, losing your phone, not a serious matter. Shoplifting, not a serious matter unless it's over £200. These things do matter, Piers, because it matters a lot to people.
Yes.
If you lose your phone, you lose your bike, if you're burgled and they only nick a bit, the fact is
but every crime
they've broken into your home.
Every crime should be looked at. I mean, the problem about it is that you lost 20,000 police officers under the Tories. As a result of that, they weren't able to do absolutely everything. What you've got to do is increase police numbers quite clearly, so you do investigate every crime that happens.
But also, I mean, it's the police have got a broader portfolio now because of hate crime and racial crime. If I made a racial slur here now, I imagine 4 police at least would be here in minutes.
There'd be 4 vans if you did it online.
But I mean, they've got to focus on real crime, something that, of course, certainly in London, Sadiq Khan, the Labour mayor, has failed completely. He's also in charge of the Metropolitan Police. He's the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. And, I mean, crime has soared under him. Soared.
Well, they've got the priorities right. When my phone was stolen, not going about me, it's not all about me, but the first question I was asked by the police is what ethnicity I was.
No.
Genuine, it's on the form. Should we talk about art? Because it's a subject neither of us know much about.
I know anything about it. Nothing at all.
Let's talk about Banksy, shall we?
Marvellous. Yes, well, Banksy, who's done these marvellous art displays of animals throughout last week, and every time we thought it was the last one, there was a new one. He did a brilliant one of a fish tank around a police box. He's done a rhinoceros, looks like it's mounting a broken down car.
I saw that one, that was quite clever.
And someone has actually vandalised that or put some graffiti on it. But actually, I think Banksy won't mind that because it's real. But what Banksy has done is brought a smile to Londoners' faces. And it's marvellous that he's doing this, and we don't know where it's leading. It could be more to come.
It feels like a big flourish, doesn't it? That actually he's building up to something phenomenal.
How does he do it in secret when it's all done in such a public place?
Well, he has a team, and he does it in the middle of the night.
Right.
And, for example, the fish bar with the pelicans, brilliant stuff.
I remember that one,
That fish bar will be doing huge amount of business now as a result of this, and hopefully it'll stay in business forever, because those pelicans on the fish bar are absolutely fantastic.
He did a satellite dish, and this is about crime in London. He did a satellite dish, and someone nicked it straight away.
No, the question is, did he intend that? Quite clearly, a Banksy is a very valuable commodity. You stick it on a satellite dish, it's like sort of sticking the Mona Lisa on a lamppost. Somebody's going to come along and nick it.
I thought it might have been a bit
But it's his humour, I think, is the great thing. And also, he's exported this around the world in Penang, in Malaysia. In Georgetown, there are Banksy-style graffiti on walls, paintings. There's a particular one of children with bicycles, which has become a massive tourist attraction. And the artist who did that said he was inspired by Banksy.
Good for him.
And it has brought joy, smile, and tourism
Talking of tourism, who wants to go up Pompeii, gentlemen?
Madonna does. And she wanted to hold a 66th birthday party there, which has upset the locals.
I should think so. It's a pretty historic, fragile monument,
but
Pompeii.
her plan
it's an ancient ruin.
It is an ancient ruin. Talking of which.
Her plan is to bring 2,200 guests into the amphitheatre there and have a huge party, and the locals are upset about this. I'd have thought they should be quite pleased. I mean, if you've got an old amphitheatre, you can't do much damage to it if you hold a party there.
Are you sure?
And on the basis of that, why don't we use these old historical monuments for something useful?
Well, I actually think Madonna should have done it near a different volcano and gone to Etna in Sicily, which is at the moment live. So there was a good chance she and her ghastly bunch could get covered with molten lava.
You're not a fan.
We could be rid of the ghastly
You're not
woman.
a fan. You're not
I'm
a fan.
not a fan of her.
The police are waiting for you outside on that one.
Sale-by date. She is, I think, I've never thought much of her music, such as it is. And as for her, you know, buying children all over the world, I think she's ghastly. And
hold on,
and if I was lived anywhere near Pompeii, I'd be joining the throng and saying, no thanks, Madonna.
Yeah. She's passed her best, but we've got Mick Jagger, 81, still on the road.
Yes, well, I think he's passed his best too.
I saw her perform in Hyde Park, and she lost the park because she didn't perform songs that we knew. She was trying out new ones, so we were like a laboratory, test laboratory, and people were drifting away long before the end.
Something you never need to hear at a concert is, here's my new concept album.
No, we want to hear Like a Virgin, Like a Prayer. We want to hear all the old ones. That's what people had paid good money for. We felt ripped off, actually. We will be moving on, and more to talk about.
They're coming back.
They are coming back. Yes, they are coming back because we're going to tell you all about Interpol, which could be a problem for Keir Starmer in small boats. But first, we're going to get the headlines to Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, Dawn, thank you. It's 10:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calicane, saying they have blood on their hands. That's after a new review found an NHS trust played down Calicane's risk to the public by potentially omitting key details, including his symptoms of psychosis. Calicane, who has paranoid schizophrenia, fatally stabbed 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar before killing 65-year-old caretaker Ian Coates in June 2023. A man has been charged after an 11-year-old girl was stabbed in Leicester Square. The Met Police have confirmed 32-year-old Johan Pinatru of no fixed address had been charged with attempted murder and possession of a bladed article. It was initially thought that the girl's mother had also been hurt. However, it was later confirmed that blood from her daughter's injuries had been mistaken for injuries of her own. And Donald Trump has called Joe Biden's decision to quit the presidential race a coup during a talk with tech billionaire Elon Musk. The interview finally got underway on X with more than 1.3 million people tuning in after a delay which Musk blamed on a cyber attack. Trump confirmed he will return to Butler in Pennsylvania in October after surviving an assassination attempt there. The US presidential candidate also criticised the EU and his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris.
I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different... Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2793 and €1.1716. The price of gold is £1,923.50 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,207 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Right, up next, we'll bring you the latest from the interview between X's Elon Musk and former US President Donald Trump. Was someone looking for a new job, I wonder? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go too far. We'll see you soon.
Morning. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday, but nonetheless some hot sunny weather across eastern parts today. However, elsewhere things are going to be a bit fresher as we have a band of rain pushing in, and that's going to be bringing some wet weather too. Most of that rain has now cleared away from Northern Ireland with just a few showery outbreaks following in behind, but across Scotland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest it is going to turn cloudy and wet as we go into the afternoon. Ahead of the front towards central eastern parts parts of England, it's staying sunny, and with that, pretty hot, with temperatures getting into the high 20s, so not as high as it was yesterday. As we head towards this evening, that front will have started to clear away across parts of Scotland, but nonetheless, some showery outbreaks of rain following in behind, and there will be some strong winds, particularly out towards the west, some coastal gales perhaps for the Hebrides, along with that showery rain. For Northern Ireland, it's a mostly fine end to the day, some sunny spells, 1 or 2 showers perhaps. A cloudier story across much of northern England as that front continues to make its way southeastwards. That rain then spreading across Wales into the Midlands and many parts of southwest England, but all the time across the east and southeast it is staying largely dry. Some clear skies to end the night here, but overnight we are going to see the cloud building as that front gradually makes its way towards the southeast. And here we could have some heavy bursts of rain around as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further towards the northwest, some clearer skies behind that front and fresher air, and so here temperatures quite on the low side, dropping into single figures away from the towns and cities. Through tomorrow morning, yes, some further heavy rain likely across parts of central, east and southeastern England for a time. The rain is going to break up a bit as we go into the afternoon though, but with the bright sunny spells we could see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers developing later. Elsewhere, plenty of dry, bright, sunny weather around and temperatures around average for the time of year, so mid-20s at best. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A720 Edinburgh City bypass, the inside lanes closed eastbound where a car's broken down between the Calder and Baberton junctions with queues from Hermiston Gate, taking roughly 20 minutes back onto the M8 there. On the M77 in East Renfrewshire, the outside lanes closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 4 in Mearns, causing queues. On the M42 in Warwickshire, 2 lanes are closed southbound at junction 3A for the M40, where a vehicle caught fire with queues back beyond junction 5 at Solihull. On the M25 in Kent, it's down to 2 out of 4 lanes anti-clockwise, with the left-hand Dartford tunnels closed because of a breakdown. There are queues from junction 2 for the A2, and there are also 2 lanes closed clockwise at junction 1B at Dartford after an accident, with queues back over the QE2 bridge. And in West Sussex, the A286 is closed in both directions between Kingsley Green and Fernhurst because of a fallen tree. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I have. So, I'm Andrew Pearce here with Dawn Newsroom in for Bev Turner. The time is, 10:38. We've got lots of texts and emails coming in.
And do keep them coming as well, because actually there's some very, very strong opinions out there.
There really are. Lots on the Nottingham stabbings. Maggie says, how many more lessons does the establishment need? We just seem to have never-ending inquiries and the recommendations are never implemented.
That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah. And this is Kevin says, many people have mental health issues. They don't have a desire to kill. It's not an isolated incident. And lots of you are worried. And we tried when we were talking to the lady from
Rachel Kelly.
To reassure people that, you know, it's not happening all the time. But it is worrying that they just let these mistakes happen, and we still don't know who was involved. No names have been named yet. You noticed that one?
No. And on the migrant crossings, Kevin says what Starmer and the Labour government do not understand is the thought of going to Rwanda was a deterrent and would have saved the country millions.
Exactly. And, migrant crossings. What Starmer and the Labour government failed to understand is that the thought of going to Rwanda was a deterrent and it would have saved the country millions.
Yeah, and let's just read one about Harry and Meghan. Melinda says...
I knew you wanted to.
It should be made clear Harry and Meghan's trip is not a royal visit. They wanted nothing to do with royalty, but yet used their titles to do trips like these. Their titles should be removed immediately.
What titles have they still got? I've lost the plot.
Well, she's the Duchess. They're the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. He's still Prince Harry.
Yeah, that's true.
He was born a prince, don't forget.
Yeah.
And the Duke and Duchess was a gift from the late Queen at their wedding.
But this is the fact that they're off to Colombia, which they, in their view, appears to be safer than Windsor.
Yeah, they can't come here because
I can't get my head around this one.
I can't bring my wife to Britain because she wouldn't be safe, but I can take her to Colombia, which some people may describe as bandit country, where the murder rate is considerably higher
and there's a government,
than Britain.
It's a government issue. Don't go there, basically. It's not that safe.
There is. And the whole trip will be hijacked by the very ambitious Vice President who came from a very poor background, and there'll be a lot of reservations about it, I think. So now, Elon Musk's interview with US presidential candidate Donald Trump finally got underway on X last night with more than 1.3 million people tuning in.
Yeah, but they had more patience than me because there was a 40-minute delay. Trump opened up on the recent assassination attempt. That was it. I was trying to think. Sorry, brain freeze there.
No, it's because I didn't move the office queue. She's just been very diplomatic.
I'm trying to protect you. In any case, let's have a listen to what he had to say.
It's very much, I say, an act of God. It's a miracle that it happened. But I looked to the right, and the bullet came whizzing by, hitting my ear. So it was amazing. But when you think of the odds of that, and you know normally you wouldn't use it. Normally I wouldn't have the thing, and then it would have been a very different story.
Well, and it wasn't long before the Democratic Party got a verbal lashing from the former US president.
I can tell you this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different... Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said, we can do it the nice way, or we can do it the hard way.
So that was Trump. Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas joins us in the studio, friend of the programme. Jennifer, he sounded quite strange. It sounded to me like there was something going on with his teeth and his gums. Did he seem a bit unusual to you?
I don't think so. I mean, he did talk for a very long time, especially after that almost hour delay. But if you look at the papers and the mainstream media today, you're hearing about a lisp, a slur, exactly what you're talking about. I personally did not pick up on it.
That's probably what I thought I could hear.
So you're hearing a lot of people say that he had a lisp. But no, I mean, I wouldn't call what happened last night an interview, per se. It was more like a podcast.
Yeah.
It was a conversation. Elon Musk, of course, was very upfront in the beginning that he is a supporter of Trump's, that after the assassination attempt, he liked how he handled it with courage and bravery. In addition, they agree on quite a lot of policies. So this was not sort of... somebody who didn't have a view. So it was a very, very friendly interview. One in which, as you'll recall, the commissioner of the EU, Terry Breton, I'm sure you saw that letter, wanted to stop. And then part of the reason for the delay was something called DDoS, which was people trying to stop the show from going. So there are a lot of people that did not want that conversation to take place.
What's it got to do with the EU?
Well, that's a great question, and I mean, I don't know if you look at the comments.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some fabulous comments, not just from Elon and some funny memes, but just the average person saying, is this not election interference? But, and by the way, there will be a lot of people, Andrew, who listened to that last night, or most likely listened to it today.
Yeah.
The numbers are extraordinary, by the way. I mean, close to 1 billion from all the listeners afterwards, who go, I do think he sounded weird, and I don't like the way he speaks, and this isn't the man for me. Great. But we need to be able to have all voices heard. And by the way, we'd love to hear from Kamala. It's been 23 days since her coronation. No interview,
Do we know how it's gone down? Because, I mean, obviously when Biden stepped down and Kamala stepped up, she did well. I mean, the polls were actually more positive for once, and Donald Trump was actually knocked down a few points. Do we know how this interview has played out with the American public? Have you had a reaction to it yet?
Sure. Well, like I said, if you take a screenshot of the mainstream media, he was slurring. They talk about the tech issues. They talk about, people are not fans of Elon Musk right now. There's a real war on free speech going on right now. You guys know this. I mean, you're one of the channels in this country that's been so incredibly brave and allows all different views. So that's kind of the story of this.
But what about the voters? I mean,
so the
voters reacting?
Good question. And Elon said very early in the conversation, he said, this is for the independent, undecided people who don't know how they're going to vote yet. We want to give them a chance to hear President Trump in a very natural way, in a long-form way, versus a lot of adversarial interviews that take place when candidates left or right are on the back foot. So that's what he was trying to create. We will see what happens with the poll numbers for sure. And of course, he's invited Kamala on. But she needs to do some interviews.
Is she running away, in your view, Kamala Harris? 23 days now. and no interview. CNN, we know, are trying to approach her. What's she scared of? She doesn't know her own policy. Is that the problem?
Well, that's one of the problems. She's had surrogate backtrack on a few very big policies like anti-fracking, which she knows will not play well in Pennsylvania, which is a state she needs to win. There's all this question about, oh, you know, I'm going to be great on the border. Well, you were, whether it's the borders are or not the borders are, you were in charge as vice president for the last 3.5 years. So to answer your question, Andrew, what's she afraid of? If you recall in the 2020 primaries, she started off out of the gate really, really strong, right? She's attractive, she's vivacious, you know, she's got a nice vibe, as they say. But the more people saw of her and the more they heard from her and her radical left-wing policies, she tanked. She got no, you know, she didn't even make it to the, you know, to the primary in her own state of very liberal California. So that's what she's afraid of. So they're just hoping this relief bounce can carry on. But eventually people are going to want to hear from her.
All right.
Definitely.
That's Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas, and it will be interesting to see how the polls react to the Elon Musk interview.
Yes, very interesting. Sounds like a job interview to me.
Up next, Harry and Meghan's new Chief of Staff has quit. GB News Royal correspondent Cameron Walker will join us live in the studio to tell us all about it, because he didn't last long. A mere 3 months. That's probably quite a long service in Harry and Meghan's office.
They've got through quite a few, haven't they?
They have.
To be said, yeah.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A lot of people will be saying 22%, inflation's 2%. This is inflation busting. It's a massive pay rise with £2.7 trillion in national debt and rising. This costs £1 billion a year, £5 billion over the term of the Labour government. Why on earth do junior doctors deserve it?
Junior doctors have been overworked and underpaid for many years now. And in the UK, good health in our population is the bedrock for getting the UK economy growing again back to its best. So we need an NHS that's able to deliver elective care for our parents, operations, A&E service when our children need it. And that means we need doctors in our hospitals, paid fairly, motivated to be there, rather than leaving for Australia, which many of my colleagues have been doing throughout the year that I've been working. So I think we need to invest in our health service. This is a crucial first step to do so.
What about the notion that a lot of people are saying, wow, you know, hey presto, as if by magic, this has been resolved 5 minutes into a Labour term. Is there a political element to this? Were the junior doctors and the unions simply unprepared to negotiate with the Conservatives, and as soon as Labour get in, wallop, it's a done deal?
I think there were really genuine frustrations felt by junior doctors over recent years, exhaustion off the back of COVID and previously, but also the sense that pay wasn't keeping up with cost of living. And this is the first pay deal that listens to those concerns seriously, that embeds a pay rise that considers that, but also that talks about other concerns. So rotational training around the country that took where people live out of their control, sending people off to Plymouth with a few weeks' notice. I think that this deal puts staff wellbeing first and therefore puts our patients' wellbeing first as well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:50, and we have bad news as the Sussex Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Chief of Staff, Josh Kettler, has quit after just 3 months in the role.
This is just on the eve of their big public tour of Colombia. So let's talk to GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Careless. What is the Oscar Wilde quote? Oh, no, it's it is Oscar Wilde about.
Yes.
Careless when you lose one.
Yeah, but
two,
it looks
three.
deliberate almost, doesn't it?
I mean,
Yeah.
They go through a lot of staff, Cameron.
Yes, they seem to have a bit of a reputation for not being able to retain staff. I think that's fair to say. I think the timing, actually, of Josh Kettler's exit is also not ideal for them because they do have very shortly an upcoming visit to Colombia. Josh Kettler was hired in May as the guy who was going to guide Prince Harry through the next phase of his life. Appointed in May, he came to London with Prince Harry for the Invictus Games 10th anniversary at St Paul's Cathedral. He also went to Nigeria with Harry and Meghan. But 3 months on, he has now quit. Now, People magazine are reporting, as well as the Press Association, that this was by mutual agreement and he wasn't the right fit and he was only ever hired on a trial basis. But even if that was the case and it was by mutual agreement, you'd think, oh, if you've got a big tour coming up that's going to put the world spotlight on you, maybe your top chief of staff shouldn't quit just before that happens, because it is going to now distract from the good work they want to do out there.
And this is at least 18, with 9, I think it's 9, having left since they moved to California. I mean, it's starting to look like there is something quite difficult with them to work with.
And we shouldn't forget, Cameron knows more about this, there was a report done by lawyers, which was commissioned by Buckingham Palace, into allegations that Meghan had bullied her staff, which was never made public.
Yeah, well, that report, yes, has not been made public. What was made public was an email their former Communications Secretary, Jason Knauf, sent to Prince William's private secretary in 2018, voicing his concerns that Meghan was allegedly bullying staff. Now, Meghan has always denied, and her lawyers have always denied those allegations against her. But, of course, that is still kind of bubbling under the surface, those allegations. On the other hand, however, there have been instances where Harry and Meghan's staff member has departed by mutual agreement, and both sides have publicly praised each other and wished each other well for the future. So I think it's fair to say that not every staff member that's left their service has left badly, if that makes sense. There have been some good instances. But, as you say, Andrew, we're getting close to 20 members of staff since 2018 who have left their service. Some of them may well have left because they've been given better offers, more money perhaps, because if you work for somebody like Prince Harry or Meghan Markle, your profile increases, therefore perhaps you're more employable elsewhere. On the other hand, they might be struggling to bring Harry and Meghan forward to the new direction because they're no longer working members of the royal family. They lost their deal with Spotify. Netflix is a little bit up in the air as to what their next project is going to be. Reportedly, there's stuff in development. We haven't seen that happen yet. And Meghan also reportedly is struggling to find a chief executive for her new lifestyle brand, American's Riviera
That's the
Orchard.
brand,
The strawberry jam.
Yeah, so I was told by a source very close to Meghan that 50 or so jars were sent out to her close friends. A number of which were influencers. I was going to add, Andrew, to then post on their Instagram stories. But the website from when I last looked is still kind of in development, and there's more to come. But of course, you need somebody to run it, and I don't think Meghan perhaps can run it all by herself.
Right, interesting. Well, and of course there'll be more to report when they go to Colombia.
Potential vacancy for you, Mr. Pearce.
I don't think they'd employ me. Now, up next, we're crossing over to Dover to see how the Prime Minister's getting on with smashing those criminal gangs. Do you remember? They're going to stop the gangs. Don't miss it. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. Alex has your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday, but nonetheless some hot sunny weather across eastern parts today. However, elsewhere things are going to be a bit fresher as we have a band of rain pushing in, and that's going to be bringing some wet weather too. Most of that rain has now cleared away from Northern Ireland, with just a few showery outbreaks following in behind, but across Scotland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest it is going to turn cloudy and wet as we go into the afternoon. Ahead of the front towards central eastern parts of England, it's staying sunny, and with that pretty hot, with temperatures getting into the high 20s, so not as high as it was yesterday. As we head towards this evening, that front will have started to clear away across parts of Scotland, but nonetheless some showery outbreaks of rain following in behind, and there will be some strong winds, particularly out towards the west, some coastal gales perhaps for the Hebrides, along with that showery rain. For Northern Ireland, it's a mostly fine end to the day, some sunny spells, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, a cloudier story across much of Northern England, England as that front continues to make its way southeastwards. That rain then spreading across Wales into the Midlands and many parts of southwest England, but all the time across the east and southeast it is staying largely dry. Some clear skies to end the night here, but overnight we are going to see the cloud building as that front gradually makes its way towards the southeast. And here we could have some heavy bursts of rain around as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further towards the northwest, some clearer skies behind that front and fresher air, and so here temperatures quite on the low side, dropping into single figures away from the towns and cities. Through tomorrow morning, yes, some further heavy rain likely across parts of central, east and southeastern England for a time. The rain is going to break up a bit as we go into the afternoon though, but with the bright sunny spells we could see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers developing later. Elsewhere, plenty of dry, bright, sunny weather around and temperatures around average for the time of year, so mid-20s at best. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's me.
Good morning. It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 13th of August, and live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce, that's him, and Dawn Neeson in for the lovely Bev Turner this morning.
Now, the families of the 3 victims of last year's Nottingham murders say the NHS has blood on its hands for missing warnings about the killer, Valdo Calacani. Will Hollis has the latest.
A review by the Care Quality Commission found that risks were minimised or omitted in the build-up to Valdo Calacani killing 3 people last year.
I'm
absolutely convinced that we can smash the gangs that are running this vile trade. We will set up Border Security Command to take back control of our borders and smash the gangs. Nobody but nobody should be making that trip across the channel in small boats.
In the run-up to the election, Sir Keir Starmer said he'd put an end to the small boat crisis by smashing those criminal gangs. Mark White has more.
Well, there has been no slowdown in the number of small boat migrants coming across the English Channel. Indeed, the Home Secretary has told the Cabinet to prepare for a difficult summer ahead.
And more grief for the Sussexes, or more to the point, their staff, because Harry and Meghan's Chief of Staff, Josh Kettler, has quit after just 3 months in the role. Another one bites the dust.
Indeed. And seagulls, yes, they are sullying our summer, evidently. More of us than ever are being attacked by the birds. Find out how some local councils are taking matters into their own hands. But it's not about our opinion, it really isn't, even though Andrew thinks it is. It's all about what you think, and it's very simple to let us know what that is. All you do is visit gbnews.com/your say. But first, we get some news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 11:02. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your headlines. The families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calacani in the lead-up to the attacks, saying they have blood on their hands. That's after a new review found an NHS trust played down Calacani's risk to the public by potentially omitting key details, including his symptoms of psychosis. Calacani, who has paranoid schizophrenia, fatally stabbed 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar before killing 65-year-old caretaker Ian Coates in June 2023. A man has been charged after an 11-year-old girl was stabbed in Leicester Square. The Met Police have confirmed 32-year-old Johan Panatru, of no fixed address, had been charged with attempted murder and possession of a bladed article. It was initially thought that the girl's mother had also been hurt. However, it was later confirmed the blood from her daughter's injuries had been mistaken for her own. Donald Trump has called Joe Biden's decision to quit the presidential race a coup during a talk with tech billionaire Elon Musk. The interview finally got underway on X, with more than 1.3 million people tuning in after a delay which Musk blamed on a cyber attack. Trump confirmed he will return to Butler in Pennsylvania in October after surviving an assassination attempt there. The US presidential candidate also criticised the EU and his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris.
I can tell you is this, we cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different... Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said, we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Back in the UK, nearly 5,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel since Labour came to power. That's as the former head of Border Force, Tony Smith, told GB News that Sir Keir Starmer's plan to smash the gangs will be very difficult to achieve.
We expect the UK to be able to smash the gangs, if you like, without some form of international collaboration where powers can be used by other countries on their jurisdictions to bring people to justice and to prevent people and goods crossing borders, etc., rather than the UK being able to do this on their own.
Now, Tory leadership hopeful Tom Tugendhat will call for a national conversation about the root causes of the recent riots, arguing that Britain's social fabric has deteriorated. In his first major speech since declaring his bid for the Conservative leadership, the former security minister is expected to criticise a culture of denial. Mr Tugendhat is expected to accuse the Prime Minister of a failure of leadership and urge the police to use uncompromising force in dealing with violent disorder. The Prime Minister has warned Iran not to attack Israel during a rare phone call with the country's president. It follows a joint statement issued by the UK, US, France and Germany, seeking to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East. Sir Keir Starmer told the Iranian president he's deeply concerned amid growing fears Iran will retaliate against Israel over the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has told Russian leader Vladimir Putin that the war is coming home in the most direct challenge to Putin yet. That's a week after Ukraine first stormed the Kursk region of Russia in what is the largest counterattack on Putin's territory since the war began. Ukraine's top commander has said Kyiv's forces now control 1,000 square kilometres of Russian territory. Meanwhile, all of Ukraine is under air raid alert amid Russian drone attacks and 2 ballistic missiles. An inquest into the death of former England cricketer Graham Thorpe has opened today after his wife revealed the sportsman tragically took his own life. The inquest heard Graham Thorpe died after being struck by a train at a railway station in Surrey. Tributes flooded in for the late cricketer after his death on August the 5th. His family have since revealed he had been suffering from depression and anxiety. And the UK unemployment rate has surprisingly fallen according to official figures. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows the percentage of people who are out of work and looking for a job dropped to just 4.2% in July. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
So, hello and welcome. Britain's Newsroom live across the UK with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Newsom for Bev Turner. Lots of people have been getting in touch, Dawn, I think.
Loads of you getting in touch. And I can even read some of them out. And thank you for the compliments, I think they're compliments. They might not be about the colour of the suit. I thought it was bright and vibrant.
Well, I like to wear blue, actually. Oh, about your suit.
I'm trying to brighten up your blue, any case. So, we're talking about mental health earlier on with this. The stories on the front page of many of your newspapers about the awful stabbings in Nottingham and the mental health care situation in this country. And John says, isn't there a much bigger issue than not being addressed? Why are there so many people in need of mental health care in this country? Which is actually a really good point, isn't it?
Yeah, and the migrant crossings, that's an exclusive for GB News. We've reached 5,000 crossing the Channel since Labour won the general election. So Eddie says, congratulations again, 5,000 illegal migrants across the Channel since Labour won the election. Why aren't you acting to protect our borders? This has been an emergency for 10 years at least. Stop sticking your head in the sand and protect our borders like you're supposed to do.
Yeah, this is exactly that. And Chris, you echoed what I was saying earlier on. How exactly is the government going to stop boats leaving French soil? It's simple, it's just pierce them. I'm sure the French authorities would not like the presence of British police on their beaches, but we've paid them enough money, haven't we? It's quite obvious the French are more than happy to say au revoir.
And Jacqueline says the only way to stop the boats is to put the Navy out with the threat of illegal migrants turning back or be shot. Jacqueline, I don't think we can go down that route.
Do you think we can
shooting them?
No, I'm not sure.
But moving on, the families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims, Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates, have criticised, understandably, mental health services who dealt with the killer Valdo Kalakhan in the lead-up to the attack, saying they had blood on their hands.
That's after a new review found an NHS trust identified missed opportunities to deal with Valdo Kalakhan's psychosis.
Well, he was sectioned 4 times. And let out.
The writing was more than on the wall, wasn't it? I mean, they let him out to the care of his GP, and we all know how difficult it is to see your GP, because he said, I've stopped hearing voices in my head, I'm fine.
Well, he's very
That's
lucky.
fine, off you go then.
Lucky to see a GP. Well, let's talk now to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Will, over to you.
Yes, well, ultimately, this is the conclusion of a special review which was ordered by Victoria Prentice, the Attorney General. And at the end of this Care Quality Commission review, it was found that risks were minimised or omitted by the mental health trust that was treating Valdo Kalakhan. It said that in this final part of the review, Nottinghamshire Healthcare Foundation Trust had downplayed risk assessments which had noted things like psychosis and the fact that Valdo Kalakhan was refusing to take medication over a period of 2 years until 2022. 8 different risk assessments were found to have downplayed some of those problems. The CQC said that Kalakane's records made it clear that he was acutely unwell, and it included those symptoms of psychosis. Kalakane was sentenced to an indefinite hospital order and is now residing at Ashworth High Security Hospital in Merseyside after killing those 3 people, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley-Kumar, 2 19-year-old students who were on the way home from a night out here in Nottingham, as well as Ian Coates, a 65-year-old caretaker who was on his way to work. Now, this happened a little over a year ago in June 2023. The families reacting today have said that the medics and doctors that cared for Valdo Kalakane, who was experiencing symptoms of psychosis and schizophrenia when he conducted that knife attack, have blood on their hands, and they've now said that after a meeting with West Streeting, the Health Secretary and the Attorney General, that it has been confirmed to them that there will be a review into a public inquiry into what happened in June last year. Now, it is the Nottinghamshire Healthcare Foundation Trust which was ultimately caring for Valdo Kalakane, and in a statement they said that we acknowledge that and accept the conclusions of this report and have significantly improved processes and standards since the review was carried out. We hear as well that Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has committed to that review, but the families say that they want it to be a statutory public inquiry so that people can be compelled to come and speak before the inquiry.
All right, that's our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Thanks so much for that.
It's just, honestly, you just can't, those poor families, just a catalogue of errors.
Their loved ones should still be with them.
Of course they should. They really should. And you know what? No one is being named and shamed in this. A catalogue of errors, and it's like, OK, we're going to look into it, we'll do something. But as you pointed out earlier, Andrew, this has been going on for decades.
30 years ago, and that guy was stabbed to death on the tube, a London Underground station.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
By a schizophrenic who'd been pushed from pillar to post for 5 years.
And we're still here where we are now.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. This isn't going to cheer you up much either. 5,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel since Labour came into power. That's as Border Force experts warn Sir Keir Starmer's response to a promise to smash the gangs is, well, what we call a near impossible task. Joining us now is GBNews Home and Security Editor Mark White, who's down in Dover, looking very gorgeous. Dover, not you, Mark, obviously.
Well, indeed, Dover is beautiful today, as you say, not like me. But as far as Labour is concerned, they were warned repeatedly in the run-up to the election that there would be no quick and easy solution to ending the small boat crisis. Their plan, of course, is to smash the gangs, but the former head of Border Force, a man with a great deal of knowledge, Tony Smith, has been telling me that really in order to do that you need intergovernmental cooperation, deep cooperation across numerous countries, because this is an international crisis, and it's all very well and good giving Border Force, the new Border Security Command, additional powers in the Westminster Parliament, but if they can't enact those powers overseas, then it's clearly going to be difficult. And there has been no slowdown in the number of small boats coming across the English Channel, as you know, since Labour got into power, reaching, of course, that 5,000 milestone as we are, where a lot of the boats that they seize in the English Channel are deposited. Here's my report. At a compound on the outskirts of Dover, a sobering illustration of the scale of the task facing the new Labour government in their efforts to end the Channel migrant crisis. Row after row of small boats, hundreds of them, many now deflated and rolled up. As we filmed, contractors dropped off more dinghies, the latest to have made the illegal crossing into UK waters.
This is for Rishi Sunak!
Sir Keir Starmer's focus is on going after the people smugglers, who've now sent thousands more migrants across the Channel since Labour came to power. But the former head of Border Force says tackling international criminal gangs will be extremely difficult without full cooperation from many other governments.
It is a very, very big ask, I think, to expect the UK to be able to smash the gangs, if you like, without some form of international collaboration where powers can be used by other countries on their jurisdictions to bring people to justice and to prevent people and goods crossing borders, etc., rather than the UK being able to do this on their own.
Tony Smith says there is no indication so far that the appetite of the smugglers and their customers has been in any way diminished since Labour came to power.
This is a hugely lucrative business. There is an unending supply of migrants pervading the EU border, many of whom are in various member states, very keen to get across to the UK, who are prepared to mortgage their lives, effectively, to get a place on a very dangerous vessel to get themselves into UK territorial waters. That narrative still exists, I think, across Europe and beyond. So the pull factor is very much there.
For now, at least, the migrant boats will continue to stack up here, as even the government acknowledges it'll take some time for its new approach to impact the organised criminal gangs, making millions from their trade in human misery. Mark White, GB News.
That's an awful lot of boats there, isn't it?
It's going to be a big political problem for this government, and I was pretty sure once the riots died away last week, thank God they did, the next focus would be the small boats. It's August.
It's going to be. It was so important
to
weather,
people. And they're going to be pouring across the Channel, and they are now. Up next, shocking reports about fatal heat waves sweeping across Europe. Not to Britain so far, we hope. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. You know, everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and you know, it can become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, you know, I kind of thought, you know, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, you know, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, you know, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, you know, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So it is, the time is now 10:20. Britain's Newsroom live across the UK. Andrew Pearce, Dawn Neeson. The panel is back. Piers Pottinger and Nigel Nelson. I'm just... jaw dropped slightly there, Nigel. You told me you're supporting these wretched GPs taking part in the first industrial action for 60 years. I thought the advent of your wonderful new Labour government and Wes Streeting the health sector was going to change everything.
No, the reason is it's not a strike, it's industrial action.
What's the difference?
Well, this will be a work to rule.
Right.
So give you an example.
Strike in my book.
Well, a work to rule is not a strike.
Well, they're going to go from 50 appointments a day, if you're lucky, to see a GP, down to potentially 25.
That's right. Now, that's the one thing I think is actually a real positive. The GPs shouldn't be seeing 50 or 60 patients a day. It's far too many. So that if they saw 25, which is actually the limit that they're meant to see, if they saw 25, they could give them a bit longer. They wouldn't be exhausted at the end of the day, and mistakes might be made.
Is this seeing, Nigel, including telephone consultations, or is it like literally face-to-face?
Well, as far as I know, it's face-to-face.
No, it's not. It's telephone consultations or Zoom as well.
That was the,
I mean, I didn't know that, but I mean, whatever it is, that a GP should be able to give time to a patient, to try and stop mistakes being made, and to actually see if they can do something to really help that patient. And if you keep the number of people down, that would help.
So 25 get to see a GP in some form, Piers. The other 25 don't, and Nigel Nelson thinks that's progress.
Well, of course, I mean, the BMA is a really disgraceful organisation. It is very highly political, extremely left-wing. GPs, on the whole, are very well paid. They have fabulous pensions. And I don't believe for 1 minute they'll see anyone for any longer because they're seeing less patients. But my GP in my surgery tells me that they are very loath to follow the BMA's instructions, and they detest the way the BMA is a political organisation that is actually doing nothing to help the National Health Service. And they feel they are reasonably paid for doing a very valuable job. And I honestly think the BMA should start focusing on how they could help improve the NHS and work with the NHS and the government instead of doing what, of course, all the trade unions are now doing with the Labour government in, just simply going for more and more money, like the ludicrous 22% pay rise to junior doctors. That's not going to help the National Health Service.
Well, if it keeps them working, but I mean, the doctors
they work anyway.
The doctors were going on strike. So one of the things about strike action is that it makes things worse. If you can solve that and stop those strikes happening, it's A, much more cost effective, and B, especially with the NHS, that's the way to make sure waiting lists come down.
This is just giving in to trade union blackmail. That's all it is. And of course, the trade unions who pay the Labour Party, pay MPs absolutely outrageously, that this is even allowed in modern society, for them to run a basically glorified protection racket. It's absurd. And the BMA is one of the worst examples of trade union policy.
And we saw the 22% pay rise agreed with the junior doctors, Nigel, and then the BMA leaders said, this time next year, we'll be ready to consider strike action again.
Well, I mean,
they've got it in their nostrils now, strike action, haven't they? They've got it in their blood. It's in their DNA.
The 22% is over 2 years. So we won't be having a strike over the next 2 years. What they would look at is what they would do after that. They still have this claim that they want 35%, based on the fact that is the money they've lost over the last 20 years.
Allegedly.
Well, I mean, that is true. I mean, the pay in real terms has gone down, so they're right about that. I don't agree with the 35%. I mean, 35% is ridiculous, but 22% may not be if you actually divide that over a 2-year period.
Well, wait for the nurses to come in when they've already indicated they want some. That's next. Then we'll have the rail workers. Then we'll have everyone else doing it. The civil servants, you know, working from home, refusing to go into the office. All these wonderful things are coming at us. And Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer solve it by throwing money at everyone. So when the budget comes in the autumn, and my goodness me, what a dreadful autumn we're all going to have, we are all going to get clobbered for this absurd spending spree that Rachel Reeves has embarked upon at the behest of the trade unions.
If 5.5% for public sector workers is too much, what is the figure that you would like to have given them?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, inflation is 2%. Why not? What's inflation? The inflation rate?
It's certainly she's giving it way above what anyone else would do because she's at the behest of her paymasters, the trade union. And she's simply being manipulated by the likes of Mick Lynch and his mob.
22% for the junior doctors at a time they're saying to 10 million pensioners, you cannot have your £200 winter fuel allowance. There could be a cold winter this year. And you know a lot of those pensioners who won't get that £200 don't have very much money at all and will struggle. And you've had organisations like Age UK saying people will be choosing between heating and eating this year. Under a Labour government, 5 weeks old, they're saying that.
All true. I was surprised you did that, and probably the best way of doing it would have been to roll in the £200 or £300 into the pension itself, so you could tax it. That would give you a return from the richer pensioners without penalising the poorer ones. She needed that extra money. I mean, whether you believe in the black hole that existed in the...
They suddenly discovered the black hole.
Yeah, well, whether you believe that or not, but that's the reason for it. While I was surprised that she did it, I understand the point of it. She needed the £1.7 billion.
The way Rachel Reeves is going, we'll have the IMF coming in to rescue the country sooner than they had to do under the great Dennis Healey.
While we're on the subject of weather, let's talk about the killer heat wave from hell, evidently. That hot weather inflamed by carbon pollution has killed nearly 50,000 people in Europe last year. Who wants to pick up with this one? According to this story in The Guardian.
Well, there you are. You see, it's The Guardian.
Where did the 50,000 figure come from?
This study, if you look further in the article, it's a study in something called Natural Medicine or something like that by some left-wing climate campaigner who has come up with these figures. As Dawn said, where do these figures come from? Are they real? This is a complete scaremongering nonsense story.
So do we accept that Europe has heated up twice the global average? I mean, there's a figure that seems to be uncontested, that 2023 was the hottest year on record. Do we accept there's something going on out there where the climate is actually changing?
I think the climate's changed. I've not read any evidence that 50,000 people have died because of a heatwave last year. Don't you think it would have made a few headlines?
The climate's changed since the beginning of time. I mean, this year, we've had a colder year than last year. No one's actually focusing on that so far.
And this figure is carbon pollution, by the way. So this is actually people's lungs being affected. Right. So, but all of which is caused by climate change. And so we go back to whether or not that we try and hit net zero by 2050. By 2050. And as far as I can see, yes, that it's imperative that we do when these things keep happening. I mean, you can see it with your own eyes. You can see I know climate and weather are different, but you can see how the weather is changing.
Piers?
Well, I've used my umbrella this year much more than last year, so maybe climate is changing, but going back a bit.
Well, it causes floods too.
Of course it is changing. I mean, you know, climate changes. That's a fact. I accept that.
But do you accept it's man-made? It's predominantly man-made?
Not all of it, no. Not all
predominantly man-made.
Not all of it.
Therefore, we can do something about it.
I mean, this study, which is very hard to get to the bottom of, because typically in The Guardian it's so badly written, the article, you can't actually figure out where this information's coming from.
We've got time for one more. Squeeze in one more story. Sorry, Bev. You're not Bev. That's trouble. That's trouble. That's trouble. Sorry, Dawn. The lady in yellow.
Worse. Right, thank you very much. So what do you want to go to, boys? Iran? Quickly?
Yeah, quickly Iran.
Let's do Iran very quickly, Nigel.
Very quickly, Keir Starmer spoke to the Iranian president last night. First time a prime minister has done that since Boris Johnson did it over Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. Question, obviously, is, does that make any difference? It's looking very like Iran is going to launch an attack on Israel.
I mean, you hear what, because Downing Street put out what Starmer said, but we don't hear what the Iranian president said, which is probably
really worried about you.
Bang,
I think that's probably right. Gentlemen, thank you as ever. Nigel Nelson, Piers Pottinger, don't you love them? Time now for your latest headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, thank you. It's 11:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The families of the 3 Nottingham stabbing victims have criticised the mental health services who dealt with killer Valdo Calacane, saying they have blood on their hands. That's after a new review found an NHS trust played down Calacane's risk to the public by potentially omitting key details, including his symptoms of psychosis. Calacane, who has paranoid schizophrenia, fatally stabbed 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar before killing 65-year-old caretaker Ian Coates in June 2023. A man has been charged after an 11-year-old girl was stabbed in Leicester Square. The Met Police have confirmed 32-year-old Joanne Penatru of no fixed address had been charged with attempted murder and possession of a bladed article. It was initially thought that the girl's mother had also been hurt. However, it was later confirmed that blood from her daughter's injuries had been mistaken for injuries of her own. Donald Trump has called Joe Biden's decision to quit the presidential race a coup during a talk with tech billionaire Elon Musk. The interview finally got underway on X, with more than 1.3 million people tuning in after a delay which Musk blamed on a cyber attack. Trump confirmed he will return to Butler in Pennsylvania in October after surviving an assassination attempt there. And art lovers were surprised at London Zoo this morning as the latest Banksy artwork in 9 days has been unveiled. The gorilla is the 9th animal-themed piece the elusive street artist has claimed. It follows Sunday's artwork of Piranha on a police sentry box, which has now been removed from near London's Old Bailey Court to preserve it. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2793 and €1.1715. The price of gold is £1,923.87 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,193 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sophia. Right, at noon, we have company. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily, both looking resplendent.
Well, I'm just saying, Tom's looks remarkable, considering I hear you stayed up to watch Trump.
Do you know what?
Was it worth it?
I had the bright idea that I would sort of drift off to sleep to it.
Right.
And I thought it would just be at 1 a.m. and I'd be asleep by 1:30 and it would all be fine. Of course, it didn't start until 1:44 after all of the tech problems. And then listening to Elon Musk and Donald Trump doesn't tend to be the most relaxing thing in the world.
No.
And so there I was, sort of trying to fall asleep, just with it on in the background, and I was completely unable to. It got to 3 a.m. and I was like, oh, turn it off.
Turn it off.
This bodes
Asleep like
well
that.
for our 3-hour
Do you-
show.
I've had a Red Bull.
Do you think he was speaking with some peculiar lisp?
I don't, actually. I think he's always sounded like this.
Has he?
I think because I remember all of these jokes and memes in 2016 about how camp Donald Trump sounds. I think he's always sounded theatrical. And there were all these comedians sort of putting on this. Yeah, absolutely. So I think he's always had a bit of a twinge like that to his voice.
There seemed to be a bit of a media consensus that he was slurring.
Yeah.
As you say, he had a lisp,
Well,
and it was rambling.
I didn't think he was slurring, but it was a long old chat, wasn't it? 2 hours. Too long.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, Elon Musk, a lot of questions. A lot of conversation.
It was basically a job application.
But you know what else we want to talk about today, and I'm sure you've covered this to an extent, this BBC panorama into, well, essentially the family of Vado Calacane, who, of course, brutally murdered 3 people.
No, he didn't murder them.
Sorry,
We're not allowed to say. We're not allowed to say he murdered them. Isn't it extraordinary?
Manslaughter, yes. I remember at the time it was very difficult to avoid using the word murder.
I want to use the word murder. I mean, to anyone looking with their eyes, this man murdered 3 people.
Yes.
But the law says, no, he didn't.
I know.
It was manslaughter.
And yet he was tried for attempted murder for driving the van into the 3 people. How did that make sense?
Yes, doesn't make sense at all. But this BBC panorama, we're wondering whether it gave a bit of a sympathetic airing of the family. And we're going to be speaking to Emma Webber, who, of course, is one of the mothers of is a mother of one of the victims, Barnaby Webber, to ask her what she makes of it all, because there's a lot about how they never got in touch until only a week or so ago, how they weren't involved in this documentary at all, and that they, perhaps she does not have sympathy.
And there was an extraordinary statement by the mother or the brother of Kalakani saying, how do you feel about now? We feel we've got him back.
How does that feel to the victim's family?
Extraordinary thing to say.
This killer as the victim.
Yeah.
I
we
can't
feel
believe...
we've got him back. My blood ran cold.
I've been reading about what happened in 1978.
Here we go.
With the murder of Harvey Milk. And the mayor of San Francisco. The guy that did it got manslaughter rather than murder with this very spurious offence. Anyway, California the next year abolished that the ability to sort of commute a sentence on the grounds of mental health because the whole state was so outraged by that. I wonder if we need a similar conversation.
All right.
Maybe.
Well, all that more at midday with
Sounds
Tom
brilliant.
and Emily. Up next, we'll be speaking to the owner of a seaside sandwich shop who's introduced a £1 Seagull insurance because they've been nicking his customers' toasties. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday, but nonetheless some hot sunny weather across eastern parts today. However, elsewhere, things are going to be a bit fresher as we have a band of rain pushing in, and that's going to be bringing some wet weather too. Most of that rain has now cleared away from Northern Ireland with just a few showery outbreaks following in behind, but across Scotland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest, it is going to turn cloudy and wet as we go into the afternoon. Ahead of the front towards central eastern parts of England, it's staying sunny and with that pretty hot, with temperatures getting into the high 20s, so not as high as it was yesterday. As we head towards this evening, that front will have started to clear away across parts of Scotland, but nonetheless some showery outbreaks of rain following in behind, and there will be some strong winds, particularly out towards the west, some coastal gales perhaps for the Hebrides along with that showery rain. For Northern Ireland, it's a mostly fine end to the day, some sunny spells, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, a cloudier story across much of Northern England as that front continues to make its way southeastwards. That rain then spreading across Wales into the Midlands and many parts of southwest England, but all the time across the east and southeast it is staying largely dry. Some clear skies to end the night here, but overnight we are going to see the cloud building as that front gradually makes its way towards the southeast, and here we could have some heavy bursts of rain around as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further towards the northwest, some clearer skies behind that front and fresher air, and so here temperatures quite on on the low side, dropping into single figures away from the towns and cities. Through tomorrow morning, yes, some further heavy rain likely across parts of central, eastern, southeastern England for a time. The rain is going to break up a bit as we go into the afternoon, though, but with the bright sunny spells, we could see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers developing later. Elsewhere, plenty of dry, bright, sunny weather around and temperatures around average for the time of year, so mid-20s at best. Bye-bye.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 11:41 nearly. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with him, Andrew Pearce, and me, Dawn Neeson. Now, let's talk killer seagulls from hell, shall we? The menace of summer in our seaside towns, and not just seaside towns now, actually, it's in our cities.
Everywhere. In many areas there's been a rising case of seagull muggings. Really, and we're deadly serious here. So our reporter Anna Riley has been to Scarborough, and she sends us this report.
Seagulls are a staple of the seaside. And their squawking is the soundtrack of the British coast. Summertime is their nesting season, which comes with an increase in noise, excrement and muggings from the birds. In Scarborough, North Yorkshire Council's Gull Champion says the authority is tackling these issues.
We are seeking to fight back against the seagull menace that is gripping our coastal communities. The issues that we've seen down the seafront, we're now seeing more and more in the town centre. We have a programme of street cleansing works, try and keep our streets as clean as we possibly can. We have a gull proofing scheme, so businesses, local people can apply for grants up to £2,000 to try and keep gulls away from their properties. We're also strongly advising the public not to feed the birds, not to drop litter. Clearly, fish and chips are not part of a seagull's natural diet.
The spate of seagull muggings and the filth they create has caused a drop in business for Cafe Italia.
It's a mess. It's a health hazard, and it's like the forgotten square. Holidaymakers are complaining, it's quieter for business, nobody will sit outside, and they really need to do something about the seagulls.
In Scarborough town centre, people shared their experiences with the seagulls.
I cannot stand them. They're noisy, they're messy, they nick your ice cream, they nick your chips. Don't like them at all.
A seagull stole from a sausage roll out of my little sister's hand and bit her. Yeah, right here. She was holding a sausage roll and then it just swooped down and bit her and took it away. Yeah, and it nipped me right here.
They're okay in their place, but when they're in the wrong place, there really are problems.
They've got a really good character and they're funny and they're pretty. If you paint them, you can see all the different colours on them. Yeah, I love them.
Well, I had a nice new ice cream, and I'm holding it, and it just came, it was about this close to my face, came right down, took the entire thing and swooped off. I guess I was lucky it didn't hit me.
You can see the droppings everywhere. It's near some shops, you know. It's a bit, you've just got to swerve around it in case one comes along.
Like them or loathe them, seagulls are protected as their colonies are rapidly declining. The advice is not to feed them and to guard your goodies from the opportunistic birds. Anna Riley, GB News.
Well, let's talk to someone who's had to take pretty practical steps to avert this menace of these seagulls. That's the owner of the Cheesy Toast Shack in St Andrews, Kate Carter-Lark, who's been impacted by them rather too often. Kate, good morning to you. Tell us what you've done, because you may be setting a trend here.
So we were basically getting so many seagull attacks down at the beach. And we're a small independent family-run business, and so we've got a very big ethos on good vibes and all this kind of thing. And we always replace the toasties if they got stolen. But they became increasingly occurrent that we just were starting to think about ways that would protect both us as a business and the customer. So we decided to introduce this £1 Seagull insurance, which the customer optionally pays. It's not like you have to pay it, it's just an optional fee. And that ensures you that you can get your sandwich replaced that £1 rather than having to pay the full price again.
Because it must be getting to the point for you then, Kate, where you've had to replace so many sandwiches or ice creams, whatever the food is they've pinched, that's whacking into your margins.
Yes, definitely. So we're having to replace the maximum attack we've had, like the record is 30 in one day. And as I say, we're having to replace those. And so I'm just going to have to move away for 1 second. Sorry, I've got my toddler in the car and she keeps screaming at me. Sorry, it's summer holidays and she knows to be quiet, but she's trying to wind me up. So it's eating into our margins at such a rate that we're just having to introduce this in order to stop eating into our profits at such a rate. We're also got, as I say, quite a good ethos of the business and stuff, and we do always say at the end of each year, if we're in a profit as a company, then we'll give back to community and feed back into community. So this isn't some money grabbing scheme. This is something that can protect the business. And last year we sponsored 2 children's football teams and got all their strips and all of that. So we're just trying to keep ourselves afloat, but also kind of being understanding to the customer as well, so they're not having to pay full whack again.
And Kate, are most people happy to pay the pound or whatever it is, insurance?
Yeah. All the feedback's been pretty positive, actually. It's just a couple of negative comments and things like that, but I don't really see how it can be negative, because it's asking you to just pay £1 and then you'll be able to get it, exactly the same sandwich instead of paying full whack. But yeah, everyone's kind of received it really well. And I do kind of listening to other businesses, it does sound like other ones are kind of going to follow suit and do the same kind of thing, which I think is a really good idea.
I think it. Just very quickly, Kate, how do they prove that they've had their sandwich taken by a seagull, though? Anyone swinging the lead a bit here?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Obviously, you might get people that are going to say that they've had it happen to them, they haven't, and they're the ones that aren't the nicest people. I guess we kind of always work on good vibes, karma. If people are going to be like that, then something bad probably happened to them down the line. But maybe if it does get to that point, we'll have to introduce a token system or something like that as proof.
All right, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
Kate Carter-Lark, who's the owner of the Cheesy Toast Shack in St Andrews. If I'm in St Andrews, then I'm going to go there. I'm going to pay for my insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. I would as well. Right, up next, we've got a spooky story for you. A magazine that exposes fake mediums is on the brink of going bust. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go too far.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Esther, can we talk about Andy Murray? Because Andy Murray has retired, which is great news. And in the papers today, his lovely wife, Kim, said, this is good, I'm glad he's retired, because he can do some childcare now and a bit of housework. But you know all about relationships. Yes. This is going to be an adjustment for them, isn't it?
Absolutely. And as a father and a husband as well, Mark, that when you are at home, you are actually a big pain in the... Because you are kind of wired and you want to be doing stuff. And Andy Murray's goal-driven. Can you imagine? He's going to be I'm going to make chili con carne. I'm going to make chili like this and this. And, he's going to be so focused and he's going to have so much energy. I would be terrified to live in the same house as Andy Murray. I know he kind of comes across as quite laid back, He's a bit of a Sean Connery.
But actually, these people are driven, and that's not going to stop just because he's retired, right?
OK, when you've got a driven parent and the parent is at home, they're a nightmare. So he needs to be seriously occupied. We've got to think of some hobbies.
Isn't it Kim's turn?
To have her career?
For her to be the most important person in the house.
I think she's quite into her art and painting and things like that.
So isn't it time for him to stay at home, you know, feed the kids and all that, empty the dishwasher, and let her career be the most important?
Although I doubt he'll do that. He'll have so much other stuff to do. Punditry. Maybe he'll join his mum. She has a tennis academy.
Actually, I remember there's a documentary about both of them have a hotel in Scotland. Actually, I think they co-run and I think they refurbished it.
Yeah.
To be fair, you know, Kim, you know, not just the hotel, but I'm sure she'll have other business ventures. You're right. I think it's the right thing to do. Clearly, you know, Andy Murray has had to be out the house. You know, probably she's had to look after the kids. I think anyone that's at the top of their game when they retire, I think the only fair thing to do is to, as you say, maybe take a step back and support your wife.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Now, like many magazines and newspapers, Psychic News, which has been around since 1932, is fighting for survival. Delighted to say the editor, Tony Ortson, joins us now. Tony, we're going to avoid all sorts of gags about you should have seen it coming.
Oh.
But what is the problem? Is this because fewer people are believing in psychics and mediums, or is it simply people have just got out of the habit of buying newspapers?
No, there are three very, very quick reasons. First of all, COVID. As we know, that came to the UK in 2020, and in England we had 2 lockdowns in that year. Church congregations collapsed. That was the first problem. Then we had a severe cost of living crisis, which is still ongoing. And if people are having to watch their money, they will cut back on non-essentials or luxuries, going out, meals up, buying magazines, buying newspapers, and that has hit us very bad. The third point is that these days we live in an online world, and that you can go to the internet for instant answers to absolutely everything. And a lot of people don't always have patience to sit down and read a book or a magazine from cover to cover. So they're the 3 reasons that we find ourselves something of a bump in the road financially.
And are you a weekly publication, Tony, or?
No, we're monthly.
Monthly.
Tony, in difficult times, people turn to spiritualism and psychic phenomena for guidance, and we are going through troubled times. Have you found interest in the subject increasing, even though magazine sales are going down?
Well, first of all, mediums don't give guidance. The role of a medium is to provide evidence of life after death. End of story. A YouGov poll, I think in 2011, showed that about a quarter of Britons had consulted a medium. I think spiritualism is always popular, but you have to realise it's a recognised religion. And surveys always show that a large proportion of people do believe in life after death, or spiritual healing, or ghosts, or apparitions. There's always a long-lasting interest.
We've run out of time, Tony. We'd like to have a longer conversation with you. We might get you back on. That's Tony Watson. He's the editor of Psychic News, which has been going since 1932. It's got to keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great, sir. Yeah.
My sister was a medium, you know.
Not surprised. Not surprised.
That's it from Britain's Newsroom. We'll be back tomorrow. Yep. Dawn will be back with me tomorrow too. Up next, though, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, coming up, a Romanian citizen, 32-year-old man, has now been charged with stabbing a girl 8 times. This relates to the incident yesterday in Leicester Square. We'll be live at Westminster Magistrates Court.
And the BBC is under fire for what's being called a sympathetic portrait of the Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane. We'll have the very latest and speak to one of the mothers of the real victims.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. It's not going to be as hot as yesterday, but nonetheless some hot sunny weather across eastern parts today. However, elsewhere things are going to be a bit fresher as we have a band of rain pushing in, and that's going to be bringing some wet weather too. Most of that rain has now cleared away from Northern Ireland with just a few showery outbreaks following in behind, but across Scotland, Northern England, Wales and the southwest it is going to turn cloudy and wet as we go into the afternoon. Ahead of the front towards central eastern parts of England, it's staying sunny and with that pretty hot, with temperatures getting into the high 20s, so not as high as it was yesterday. As we head towards this evening, that front will have started to clear away across parts of Scotland, but nonetheless some showery outbreaks of rain following in behind, and there will be some strong winds, particularly out towards the west, some coastal gales perhaps for the Hebrides along with that showery rain. For Northern Ireland, it's a mostly fine end to the day, some sunny spells, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, a cloudier story across much of Northern England as that front continues to make its way southeastwards. That rain then spreading across Wales into the Midlands and many parts of southwest England, but all the time across the east and southeast it is staying largely dry. Some clear skies to end the night here, but overnight we are going to see the cloud building as that front gradually makes its way towards the southeast, and here we could have some heavy bursts of rain around as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Further towards the northwest, some clearer skies behind that front and fresher air, and so here temperatures quite on the low side, dropping into single figures away from the towns and cities. Through tomorrow morning, yes, some further heavy rain likely across parts of central, eastern, southeastern England for a time. The rain is going to break up a bit as we go into the afternoon though, but with the bright sunny spells we could see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers developing later. Elsewhere, plenty of dry, bright, sunny weather around and temperatures around average for the time of year, so mid-20s at best. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.